So, being Christian means easier life, right? Not necessarily. So let's talk about it. Life can sometimes be a roller coaster, and we get it.
So tune into The Walk, where we'll explore the modern-day Christian journey by addressing challenging questions and trending topics faced by young adults today. No topic is off limits.
Welcome to another episode of The Walk. We are so excited to have you here with us. It's been a little bit. The last show was like a live show, and now we're back to our normal format. And we have a good one for you, like we always do. We want to invite you to make sure that you share this. So it's at The Walk Live. You can go to the website, thewalklive.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on all the podcast sites. So make sure that you listen or watch somewhere and you spread this love. But we have a good crew today. We have our resident
Andre, you already know.
Hi, I'm Tashina.
We're so excited Tashina's here.
After much pressure.
Right, much years.
Wow.
I'm Jamal.
Jamal, have you been on the new Walk?
No.
Yeah, Jamal used to be on the show quite a bit, so it's so good to have him back here with us. So tell me about your week. Tell me why
this week.
You're glad that God does the way and the things that he does. What's your testimony this week?
I had a really calm week, to be honest.
Yeah,
it was super calm. Nothing crazy happened, and actually the week flew by. So
Okay.
I like weeks like that.
Yes,
Nice.
those are good. I will say the same. Things were pretty calm at work, which normally is not the case. Things have been improving there recently, so that's a good thing. And yes, some rough patches in the week, but normally I think those patches would knock me completely down. But I was able to kind of keep pushing through. So yeah, progress.
Thank God, yeah, that's good.
We'll take it. Yeah, I had a really great week. God actually answered one of my prayers.
Amen.
Okay.
Yes, and it was one of those long prayers too. It was something I've been praying for months, and he just, showed me that nothing is too big for him. I celebrated closing on a real estate purchase.
Ooh.
Wait, that sounded wrong because it wasn't
sounds
for
like
me.
you bought it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't buy it. I sold a house.
So, yeah.
Yes, and honestly, things were looking at first a little gray, it wasn't gonna work out. But then when it came down to it, everything went so smoothly. My client was, concerned about different things, and we were concerned that different things were gonna happen, but it was just so perfect. It was honestly one of the best closings I've ever had. So not only did we close, but it was one of the easiest closings I've ever had, one of the biggest closings I've ever had. So yeah, it was a really
That's
good week.
awesome.
When
Yeah.
God's involved, you
Right.
know. Big
Felt
things.
like I should have went before you.
I'm so grateful.
That's crazy. Yeah, I think I agree with the guys here. I had a very calm week. With working in healthcare, that's not always the case. So I am very glad that the week was smooth, and that's enough to be thankful about. So yeah, I'm glad for that. So today we have a word on the street hot topic, and what you may or may not know is that we host this show at Mount Zion Seventh-day Adventist Church in Kissimmee, and this year we decided to have 2 basketball teams, and so although it was a good start, and we're hoping for great things next season, but they had one last game last week, and I'm telling you, the last few seconds of this game was crazy, and we're going to go ahead and play that on the screen for you right now. Let's go. Yeah, so Keenan, I mean, between Roscoe and then to Keenan, and then looking at the time, I'm holding the phone, and I'm like trying to make sure I catch whatever's gonna happen, and to like see like, whoa, this actually just happened.
Game winner.
Game winner.
Game winner. At the
I was
buzzer.
just like at the
Yeah.
buzzer, and I'm just thinking through like, you know, we're celebrating. You saw in the video, people are cheering, people ran over. Keenan was picked up. It's just like, wow, like that's crazy. And so, what I got from that video was that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
For sure.
Like
Facts.
we didn't know, and Keenan didn't know if he was gonna make it. Well, maybe Keenan might have a different story. But
Yeah.
he's
The
like,
whole time.
I couldn't miss that. You miss whatever fear tells you to not do. So if he saw that and he's just like, no, I can't do this, then he would have never been able to see the result.
Right.
But because that wasn't either a voice he heard or a voice he listened to, he was able to make that move. And so I was like, oh, that was really good. You miss what you do not prepare and practice for.
That's true.
And now there's certain things you can't practice, but there are some things that you can practice. And so like he knew, like you saw his last minute pivots and like to position himself right in the right place and space and took the shot. And like it was just like, yeah, you know what? He's practiced. Like I don't know if he's practiced against a timer, a shot clock, or anything like that. But it's like, no, you cannot often do what you don't practice for.
Yep.
Yeah, honestly, that reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. Opportunity or luck is just where opportunity meets preparation. Yeah, so like you
Yeah.
said, he's been practicing
Yeah.
and he had the opportunity, and it looks lucky to us, but we don't
Right,
see
right,
all the
right, right.
hours he put in.
Say all
Yeah.
skills.
All skills.
I've seen Keenan take that step back many times
Yeah. There you go.
against me.
Even if you miss, at least you know you tried. So I don't know if you've ever been in the space where you're just like, man, like I wonder if I had done this, like what would happen.
Yeah,
But if you
Yeah.
don't do that, then you truly never know. But at least in trying, you know, like, okay, you know, I gave it my best shot. And it's not that it feels good if you don't. Like, so if you make that type of shot and miss, it's not like, oh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel great. But
Yeah.
at least you don't have to live with
What if?
what if, right. And then most shots you make, you can recover from. So there's
That's
not a
true.
lot of mistakes that is just so detrimental that you can never recover from. So like, that's the thing, like, you know, sometimes in life you just gotta try something, and if it doesn't work out, you just try something different.
Yeah.
At least you know it doesn't work. Yeah, always trying. But I will say this, because, you know, there always has to be a caveat. Someone's gonna take this too far. Take wise shots with godly foundations, right? This does not apply to 100% of everything.
I'm gonna put $500 on black.
Right, I'm just saying.
Didn't work this time. Darn.
So I'm just like, you know, be wise with this. But yeah, so I like the quote that you guys share. Is there anything else that comes to mind when you think about, you know, this was basketball, but there's definitely things in life where fear could be there or we don't do things. So what would you have to say to, I guess, people? Like, what comes to mind?
I mean, I always have this mentality that you have to try whatever you're doing because everybody starts somewhere, right? And they're like, this is cool. It says like struggle and criticism are prerequisites for greatness. That's what this universe always escapes it. Because like you see people who are really successful in what they're doing, they didn't just automatically start. No, granted, you have exceptions, right? But when people are doing stuff, they're putting in effort and they're fine tuning their craft. So
Right.
over time, eventually, you're gonna get the results that you want, and then you'll probably be in that place where you're like perfect at it, and you're making your shots, and it's like no problem. But like you don't see the practice. That
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, because I feel like we have context because we saw where the team started,
Oh yeah.
and comparing it to where they ended is just completely different.
Yeah, I'll say too, like a lot of times you don't know what's going on in someone's like head. So like there's things that people have said to me like, oh, Andre, you did like a good job, or Andre, that was not. But I'm like, oh, if you knew like the chaos
What I went through.
that was in my brain, I'm like, thank God it didn't come across. But
Right.
like, you know, in my head I was freaking out, or you know, But when it comes down to like when you have to execute something, you just kind of end up doing it, you know. So that's the good thing that it is encouraging. A lot of times people don't see all of what we're concerned that people will see. So you just need to like, you know, whatever you're facing, just like do it. Like most times you're gonna be okay. And people aren't gonna see all the extra stuff, you know.
Love that. Okay. Well, today this kind of like plays into the topic that we have to talk about because money.
Yeah, money.
Just like that shot, you know, some people are a little bit timid when it comes to money. Some people don't know what to do. Some people haven't practiced for it. And so today we just kind of want to take some time and kind of educate, make you at least consider some things, you know, from the jump, like I said. Not everything may be for you, but at least you can consider some new things, maybe some things you haven't thought about. And so with season 2 of The Walk, we've been talking about, you know, some of the things that affect us. So relationships were our first 2 episodes, and you can't get through life without a relationship. Like, even if it's not romantic, like there's different people in your life that, you know, those are relationships. And so now we're pivoting to this idea of money and something that really isn't talked about in like church spaces. Like if you have to talk about money, you kind of like going out to like a seminar, you're watching videos, but you don't really hear it in a church context outside of tithes and offering
Building
or money is the root of all evil. So it's like that's really where you hear it most, but you don't really hear it in just healthy everyday dynamics. And so that's what we want to do today. So let's start it off. What is money?
Money, those green bills.
Those green bills. Well, for this
Not
country.
anymore.
For this country, right? That's true. You got digital money too.
Yeah, you got
Right.
digital. Yeah.
I guess it's a way of how we do transactions, right? So
Yeah, transactions. So what we give in exchange for something else.
Right.
We earn money from the work we do, and then we pay money for what we need and want. So that's kind of like the simplified way of doing it. Not that anybody needed a definition of money, but you know, just having that as our frame of reference. So I wanted to kind of start off and think through what does the Bible say about money? And I think you actually have the verses. So
Yeah, so there was a couple. One is like Jesus speaking in Luke 6, and he's saying, give and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. So what I like about this verse is like the part where it talks about like pressed down and making room for more, right? So like if God is giving to you, right? Let's say you're a cup, right? God's giving you money. Your cup is getting full. If you don't pour something out that cup, eventually there's going to be nothing else he can give you. So I think a lot of times we're like wondering, well, God, like, where's my blessing? Where is this? Well, like, have you emptied your cup? You know, is there space for God to give you more? And I think that's a really good biblical concept. There's another one that's just talking about, you know, hard work. Proverbs 28:19. A hard worker has plenty of food, but a person who chases fantasies ends up in poverty. Now that verse I thought was interesting, right? Because like, what's the chase's fantasies? Like, when I read that, I was like, wait, does that mean like, you know, like those parents that want you to have the traditional job? And it's like, well, I want to be an artist. No, that's chasing fantasies. Solomon said, you know, you can't chase fantasies. I don't think that's what it's talking about. I think it's really, that part's like lazy people who like they're not really pursuing anything.
Get rich quick.
Yeah, you know, they're just pursuing whatever. They're going with the wind, you know. I think that's more what it's talking about. And then let me read one more. Proverbs 21:20. Be sensible and store up precious treasures. Don't waste them like a fool. So that's basically the Bible telling you to save. Have savings. You know, don't spend everything that you get.
I like it. And so the Bible supports things beyond tithes and offering and stuff like that. There's things where the Bible has counsel on like how we should deal with money. Like there's that verse about hard work. So it's important. It's a fact of life. And so we're going to kind of jump right into it. And Jamal has a couple of different things like Jamal's like one of my go-tos for like money. Like this guy just knows, like he looks rich right now, right? He looks like money. So he has a couple of different things we're going to be going to him for. And so one of the things is, tell us about the top millionaire money myths that are out there.
So, I feel like a lot of times you look at society and it's like, oh, a millionaire is somebody with like the fanciest car, they got like the gigantic house. And granted, that may be true, but there's this concept of everyday millionaires that live within our communities and we have no idea who they are, right? So let's go through some of the like top millionaire money myths. And this was pulled together, I think it was like Dave Ramsey did a study on millionaires. And let's start with the first one. So millionaires just inherited their wealth. You would think that people have a lot of money, that someone gave it to them, it's inheritance, but you'd be surprised to find out that a lot of millionaires have developed their wealth over years to kind of get where they're at.
And you always have some of them with origin stories too.
Yeah.
Like you hear like, oh, I used to live in my car, Steve Harvey, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So
Yeah.
All right, another one is that millionaires took big risks with money to get rich quick. So we always have exceptions. Now, there's going to be people who did a get rich quick scheme and they made a lot of money. But for the most part, most people aren't going to find themselves in that situation.
And how long did they keep the money?
And how long did they keep the money? You hear about like, people who win the lottery, how they always lose their money. And there's a reason why they lose their money so fast, because they don't understand the concepts of how to get that money and how to keep it, right? So if you spend everything, inevitably you're gonna run out of money.
Right.
All right, another one, millionaires went to prestigious colleges. You would think that they all went to Harvard and Stanford and all of these schools, but people can go to a regular college, a state college, or even a community college and still end up becoming a millionaire. All right, another one, millionaires got their wealth through high-paying jobs. And I looked at this one, I was like, but I feel like, if you have a high-paying job, you should be able to like be a millionaire, but you'd be surprised that people who make a lot of money, they can still find themselves in the situation where they spend every single dollar that they have. And if you're spending everything, you have no way to really build your wealth. All right, millionaires live lavish lives, right? So I feel like in this age of social media, everybody's like going on these extravagant trips and, they just bought the fanciest new thing. And maybe, some people have money and they're spending it, and if that's what they define as a rich life and they want to make those purchases, they can. But a lot of millionaires are very much low key. And if you think about how people accumulate money, there's a saying, I think it's, actually I won't say it, but it was a Kanye West quote, we're not going to include him in here. But millionaires, the reason why that they don't end up living lavish lives is because they don't spend a lot of their money. Like, they're very intentional about how they spend their money, so they have this ability to kind of retain what they have and put money towards things that are important to them, whether it's something that's going to allow their money to grow, or maybe it's something that they truly care about.
And I think that if you have money, you don't have to show off, or you don't have to look like you have money. Like, you can be just confident that you have
low
it.
Key.
You don't have to impress
anybody. A lot
anybody.
of millionaires do not look like millionaires. Just
they don't. Yeah. I mean, it's on the list, but I'm sure we'll get there, right? So investing is only for the rich and debt-free. So if you think about your concept of your everyday millionaire, a lot of them have made their millions just by investing their money over a really long period of time and allowing their army of dollar bills to kind of work in their favor. All right, another one is the only way to build wealth is through buying a home. Now, you have people who are very successful in real estate and they've been able to kind of accumulate their wealth. But there's a lot of people who may not want to participate in real estate and they just invest in the stock market. And over time, their money is able to grow the same way how it would with real estate or whichever way they kind of choose. And then the next one is that millionaires keep their savings and checking account in the same place. And this kind of goes into how you think about your traditional bank, how the bank will only pay you a small fraction of interest, or you can put your savings, and it depends, there's different strategies you can do. You can just start buying treasury bills, just as very secure. It's like you're pretty much loaning the government money, or you can put your money in high yield savings account, where right now I think you could probably get like 4.5, maybe 5% of your money. Way better than what you're gonna get with, let's say, like a traditional Chase savings account where you get like 0.02%. You see how much interest you get? It's like 4 cents. It's like, what is this? This is nothing, right? And the bank's making money off you. They're loaning that money out, so.
And I guess also the important thing to think of is, with some of those, there are options where your money isn't trapped. Because I think that's what people think of. It's just like, oh, I want to have access to my money. But it's just like, no, there's ways you can get more interest and it's not trapped. Like, you can get it when you need it. So, okay, I like that. And there's going to be definitely more that we're going into with this. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So, think about it. What would you say is the most valuable things you've learned about money so far? So, up to this point in life, what's been the most valuable things?
Little things add up.
They sure do.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
When I be like, I'll get my credit card statement for the month and I'm looking at it, I'm like, yo, there's no way I spent that.
You spent
I'm like,
this money.
I'm like, somewhere they did some bad math, and I'll go back and look.
I'm
like, no, where's the mistake? And I'm like, all right, what did they add up twice, you know? And I'm like, oh, shoot, like
It
all
was
these
me.
Yeah.
all these little 20, 15, 20, 20, 15. I'm like, oh, all of a sudden, that's a, whew,
Gets it to
it's a bill.
100 real quick.
Yeah, gotta pay that.
Yeah.
So yeah, little things add up. That's what I'd say.
I'm going to piggyback on yours. Man, the tolls. That's like
Really?
a little thing,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because with SunPass, I guess when you have it like on the
the
auto,
auto,
reload,
right.
it's $25.
$10. Oh.
Oh, but when it gets to 10, it
Yeah.
takes another 25. Well, that's how it goes for mine, right?
Oh, yeah,
and
it's
so,
Yeah.
15
Mine is like
adds
10.
10.
Yeah. Yeah, mine is 10.
oh, okay.
Oh,
Maybe
okay,
that's
the
the
25 one.
That was a 25
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
right? And so, like, sometimes I look at my statement, I was like,
Did I
what?
really do all these tolls?
25 multiple times. And I'm just like, so at one point, I started looking up, I was like, okay, if I don't take tolls, how much longer is it truly going to take me? And I make it a daily practice now that when I'm going home from work, because I already don't take tolls to work, it's usually coming home. If I put it in my GPS, I put it both ways. I put with tolls and without tolls. If it's not saving me 15 minutes or
15
Wow.
minutes?
no, 15 is not that bad.
You will drive
That's just
15
wait,
minutes
wait.
longer?
15 extra minutes.
I'm doing stuff in my car now.
I was expecting
Hey,
like
I was
5.
thinking 5. Yeah, 5 is me. I'm like, all right.
Nah.
If it's 5 minutes, all right, I won't take the toll. 15 minutes?
Five is not
pay.
worth
No way.
Five is not worth the $4.17.
Yeah.
No, there's no way. There's no way. Well, that was my choice, right? If y'all want to keep giving the census and your money, go ahead, all right? But
Oh, man.
I was just like, you know what? I have 15 minutes. If it's gonna save me $100 a month, I'm gonna just do that. Now, it's not saying that every day I'm doing it because I have my
right.
threshold. If it's above that, I'm jumping on the toll road.
Yeah.
But that's just a little step I made, and I saw even a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we get a lot of our toll money back, every month,
Love
that
that.
helps. So
Wait,
I
how
feel
y'all
like
getting toll money back?
It's like a rebate that they're
it's a
giving
rebate.
you.
This
yeah.
is like a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you
At
spend a
least 30
certain amount.
transactions, you get it back.
Yo, they got me last year. Let me tell you something. They got me so good, like, y'all need to put me on. Okay?
If you live in Florida, this is year number 2.
Yeah, it's
you
pretty
should be
lit.
getting a rebate, especially if you're using the tolls. Like, I've got so much money. I started using the tolls for nothing
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like
Because
half-
like literally,
Yeah.
I won't. This week was the first week that I got an email of the replenishment in like months, because they'll keep like giving me the money back, then I spend that money, then they give it to me back again, then I spend it. Like, it's great.
Oh, SunPass
It's
is
a-
milking me. All right.
It's a great system.
I'm going to look into
I
this
don't even know
right
if there's
after.
anything you have to do to like
No,
sign
it
up
just
for
started. I didn't do
happened
anything. It just-
automatically.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought
it
it
just
happened
happened.
I'm
automatically.
calling them.
Yeah,
You
you
need
should call
to,
them.
there's a minimum of transactions. I think it's
Oh.
30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll use storage.
But yeah,
Oh, you gotta use them more.
You definitely have to do that. And I know most of our listeners are in Florida, so yeah, definitely
Yeah.
jump on that if you don't. Oh, I just looked it up for y'all, okay? Sunpass.com. Each transponder with 35 or more paid transactions that occur within a calendar month automatically receive a 50% toll credit. And I've been getting it, so it's for real. It's for
I
real.
just don't have enough transactions. That's probably
That's
why.
probably what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly, from what you're saying, a principle I would say is you have to sacrifice, or sometimes you have to
Yeah.
sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like if we just keep spending and spending, spending, like there's no sacrifice, then you're not going to save any money. So
Right.
that's one thing.
My time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if you're going to sacrifice the 15 minutes, like that's you. Another thing, what I was thinking before is money is in abundance. I think people think like money is hard to get, and I don't think that's
there.
necessarily true. It's
I
really
agree.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How bad do you want it?
That's it. That's
Exactly.
really what it
That's
comes down
actually
to.
the
It's like if you
question.
want it, you're going to figure out how to get it. Some way,
Exactly.
somehow.
That's
Yeah,
true.
what are you willing to do to get it?
Yeah, that's
exactly.
true.
I know one for me is that it's not about how much you make. It always comes down to how much you spend.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. And I've seen, like, I watch these
That's
videos
true.
on, like, people making so much money and they're still in debt. They're still living paycheck to paycheck. So it never depends on how much you make, because you can make $50,000, and if you spend $30,000, you're richer than a person making six figures and they're spending every dollar that they make.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And
That's
I
a
feel
word.
like we hear about, you know, live below your means, live below your means. And like, that's easy to say. And then we have to think about like, okay, what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
The practicality
It is
behind
hard.
it.
Yeah.
Because like,
The-
you know that mentally, but
Like
how
you
do you actually
said,
live that way?
sacrifice.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
and I can personally speak to that. So like, for those our viewers that don't know, like I'm a dentist, so I make decent money. And especially when I first got out of school and I started working, and I had not worked a job for what, like 8 years, and you get that first paycheck, and you're like, wow, this is beautiful.
Look at this check.
You can very easily spend all of it.
Yeah.
But I did have some goals of like paying certain debts down, saving for certain things. So like I had to look at that money and be like, no, that doesn't belong to me right now, because I want to do these things. And it is very hard because you're like, I worked hard for it, and it's technically mine, and it is in my account, but like I can't go on this trip that I can't just buy whatever I want, you know, like, so it does take some self-control and sacrifice for sure.
And sometimes it's not even necessarily a sacrifice, because you know we're saving for a bigger thing. So it's
Right,
like, okay,
right.
like, do I want to sacrifice 15 minutes, or do I want to, you know, easily travel whenever I want to?
Being intentional.
You know,
essentially.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good one. You had some stuff on the list.
Yeah.
So this
I
is,
do. Oh, what did I write?
Jamal has a list here.
Oh, most valuable things I've learned?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I wrote, if you're good with money and utilize credit cards correctly, it can be very lucrative. So some of you guys know, like, I like using credit card points to travel. That's really how I subsidize my traveling in a big way. And it's important, right? Because you hear this thing about credit cards, like, oh, credit cards are really bad, you got to be careful with them. But if you set up a budget, and if you're doing your budgeted spend on a credit card, I'm a firm believer in putting all of my charges on a credit card, because I
Amen.
already know I plan to do it. I'm getting my points no matter what, right? And you look at, like, you know, let's say you have a big purchase that you already have the money set aside for, you put on a credit card, you hit a signing bonus for that credit card, you get a points bonus. That can be either 3 plane tickets, that can be free hotels, it can be cash back, whichever way that you choose to do it. So if you're intentional about using credit cards, and if you're smart, and I'm gonna put a disclaimer on this, if you carry a balance on a credit card, like, you're not a credit card person. You have to be very careful. But
Yeah.
if you're paying your credit card off at the end of the month, no matter what, and you're not paying interest, I kind of see it as like a way to, like, beat the banks at their own game.
Exactly.
It's like the banks are charging like 23% on credit cards. It's like,
They're
all right,
betting
well,
against you.
they're betting against you.
You just
I'm
gotta
like,
one-up 'em.
I'm gonna literally.
Don't let
in
them
my head, I'm
win.
like, I'm gonna one up the banks. I'm getting money from y'all. Y'all rip off other people. You're not gonna get me. So if you do it like that, it can be very lucrative, right?
Can you actually talk about, because Andre, you're the one who told me about how the statement works and like when interest is charged.
Oh, yeah.
Like you don't actually have to pay at the end of this by this date.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you what I do. Usually I don't wait till the end of the month for my statement. I kind of like look at my credit card a lot, and I'm always making payments. Or I'm like, all right, like, or if, let's say when I get paid, I'll make a payment, or let's say if I have like a big balance. I get anxious
Same.
when I see balances on my credit card, and maybe that's just me.
We
like,
manage it the same way. so
yeah,
you'll have
I
to talk
see
about
like
your
$300 on my
own.
credit. I'm like, I need to pay this off right now. Like,
Okay, your number's lower than mine.
I see 300, like, I'll see like $1,000. I'm like, I need to pay this off immediately. Like, I need
Immediately,
it gone. I need it to be a zero balance. So it depends, right? So once the statement closes, then the balance gets reported to the credit reporting agency. So if you paid off before then, that's another way, right? Because
Yeah.
if you carry a balance, and I don't know if we're going to talk about, like, you know, how credit scores are kind of like put together, but in like utilization, but you want to make sure that your total utilization across your credit is like lower than 10%. Because once it gets like 20%, it starts becoming a negative thing on your credit. But the statement closes, that's when you get charged interest. So if you look at your statement for your credit card and you're seeing that you're paying the bank interest, I recommend kind of taking a really hard internal look and saying, like, am I a credit card person? And I guess I'm reiterating what Dave Ramsey always says. He's like, if you're carrying a balance, you're not a credit card person, cut them up. And he's really anti-credit card. And I think it may be a little bit
He's really
outdated.
conservative.
Yeah, he's very conservative when it
Yeah.
comes to it. But I'm like, if you're smart with your credit cards and you're not spending above your means and you're not making unnecessary purchases, using credit cards, and then also the purchase protection. Like, let's say you buy something on a credit card, it gets stolen, or something breaks. I remember one time I had bought a new iPhone, I dropped it. I bought it within like 3 months. I made a claim to the credit card. They were like, yeah, go to Apple, find out how much it costs. And then they refunded me back the money.
Yeah,
I was
same
like,
thing.
this is great. Like, you know, there's an extra layer of protection, even if you're traveling. I book all my flights on my credit card so that if something were to happen, I can tap into those travel benefits and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Car rentals too.
car rentals as well,
There's
yeah.
usually some type of protection.
So of course, choosing the right card is important.
Choosing the right card is
Yes,
important
yes,
too.
yes.
Like, you gotta look at where your purchases are. I can go all day.
Yeah.
on my credit
So
card.
I'll say this, right? So with credit cards, so Jamal, again, I think every credit card I have is like a recommendation.
I put you on?
from yeah. So I'm a travel person, and so Jamal does travel with credit cards way better than me, but you also have to know what card is good for you in the sense of if you're not a traveler, a travel card may not be the one for you.
Yeah, maybe a
Right.
cashback card is good for
Exactly.
you. Yeah.
So there's different ones. So you have to kind of do some research with that.
Yeah. All right.
Go ahead.
My next one. So the most valuable things I've learned is that to be consistent with investing. And I'm a huge proponent of investing. I think that it's something that everyone should participate in, no matter how old you are. Like, let's say your child is 12 years old, or you are watching this and you're like 13, have your parents set up an account for you and slowly start putting money into the stock market, because the best thing that you can do with the stock market is just have time. Like, you want your money to just work in the background and completely forget about it. And I know that we watch the news and we're like, oh my God, the stock market, like this, I'll use this week as an example. Like, the stock market is completely off its all-time highs. It's been down, and I feel like sometimes people are like, oh my God, like I'm losing money. The balance that I put in $1,000 and now I see 800. And it's like, you're not looking at the dollar amount for what you're investing. You're actually buying assets. You're buying stocks that fluctuate in price, right? Same with any market. You buy gas, the gas price goes up and it goes down. Stocks, the price goes up and down. But when you're consistent with investing, and there's a term that they use, it's called dollar cost averaging, right? So you're putting money in consistently, whether the market is high, whether the market's low, and what you're looking for is that over time, you're gonna hit that average as the market is climbing. Because if you look at the stock market in snapshots, it'll look like, oh my gosh, like the market's down. I'm gonna use, for example, COVID in 2020.
Jesus.
We watched as the world shut down, the stock market dropped, I think it was like 34%. If I'm quoting that right. We can look, or you can double check and fact check me. But it went down a lot. And you would think like, oh my God, like this is a horrible time for investing. And I remember at the time, I started investing in 2019. So it was like September 2019, and then COVID happened in March. But I watched a lot of videos to understand. I was like, oh, this is absolutely a buying opportunity. I remember putting in as much money as I could into the stock market as the market was falling like consistently. And if you think about how 2020 ended, I think that the market ended up like 13 or 14%. So you want to be consistent with the market no matter what's happening, and you want to always be buying. Always buy into the stock market, and don't buy foolishness. You know, you want to buy like broad market index funds. You want to buy like the Dow Jones or total stock market, or you want to follow the S&P 500. So yeah, always be consistent with investing. Your future self will absolutely thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, the next one is personal finance is personal. And I think it's valuable to understand this because you can look at what other people are doing and like, oh, well, you do that with your money and I should probably do it like that. And it's like, well, you want to do what's working best for you, because, how should I put it like this? There's this guy I watch, his name is Ramit Sethi, and he talks about this defining your rich life, right? How do you want to use your money? And he's like, you know, spend plentiful on things that are important to you, and cut mercilessly, mercilessly on things that you don't care about. So if you don't care about, let's say you're not a traveler, you don't want to go on vacations, but you care about having a nice car, like living in like a really big house, or you want to buy this new unique thing, or like you're into technology. That means that you should spend really big on things that you care about, because life is all about being happy, right? But then if there's things that you're spending money on that you don't really care about, absolutely cut those out. Like, why are you spending money on things that you don't want to do? So
it's funny.
That's a good one.
That reminded me, because last week I was asking all of my family, would you rather eat your money or wear your money? And because I realized I'm like, oh, I love eating good food.
Same.
I really do.
I love me some food.
Like, I don't go shopping as much as I should, but I will go out to eat and buy good
Just
food.
drop it.
I will. I'm like, it's another $4 for the extra topping. Yeah, just get it. It's like, let me do it. But and I'm like, oh, like most of my family will rather wear their money, like they want like the name brand things and stuff. But it just made me realize, like, okay, like I can't judge you because you'd rather buy nice clothes. Yeah, exactly. So that just reminded me of that.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
All right, my next one. This one I'm really big on. Budgeting is freedom. And I know that sometimes people hear the term budget, it's like, oh my God, like budgeting.
the B word.
But I remember getting to a point, it lines up with food, right? I like spending money on food. I like to eat good food. Sometimes I'm like, I live by myself. I don't want to cook. I'm like, I'm going to buy something because then I could just throw it away after I'm done versus having to like clean up the kitchen and the whole process.
Speaking my language.
And I would have trouble figuring out like, okay, am I out of control with my spending or am I not? So I set a top line number for how much I wanted to spend on food, like restaurants and groceries. And I use apps, so I use Copilot as my budgeting app. And I'm like, all right, bet, like, here's my budget. It's the top of the month. I want to spend on food. I can, right? With budgeting, you know exactly where you're at. And I think I became like this from one of my jobs. I was working at Universal. And I was working as a business analyst in our marketing department. And I was doing all of these reports on like ticket sales and all of this stuff, like trying to figure out like what's going on. I was like, I need to just track my own finances this way. Like I'm doing these Excel reports, I'm plugging in numbers. I was like, what if I plugged in numbers for my own purchases?
Right.
And like I understood like what all my metrics were. And that's when I realized, I was like, oh, with budgeting, it gives you clarity. Because I thought about it from the business standpoint, like they want us to do these reports to find out what's the next best thing we need to do. Do we need to invest more money in billboards, or do we need to like do more digital spend? And I was like, all right, well, I want to either spend money on this purchase, right? I want to save up for it. I want to buy a new computer. I want to buy a new phone. So with budgeting, I'm like, all right, I can start allocating money towards things that I want to spend. And then I can find out, where am I out of control? Am I out of control with like buying clothes? Or is my travel budget out of control? Like I said, I wanted to spend X amount of money and I'm spending more. With budgeting, it just gives you clarity of mind, like, okay, my spending's in control. But when you don't budget or when you don't track your spending, it's kind of like everything's a question mark. And that's where you get that feeling of anxiety, like, oh crap, like I think I'm spending too much money. But when you budget and you're like, oh.
You know for sure.
It's
not just based off of feelings.
It's not based off of feelings, exactly.
I think I'm spending too much, or I think I got it, and you don't know. And especially like when things happen, like, oh, like these little things add up. You think you're not spending that much.
Yeah.
But you are.
But you are.
Yeah.
So that budget helps to clear things up.
Tell us a little bit about Copilot. So what's like there's a ton of budgeting apps. Like what stood out about the Copilot app to you?
What do I like about I think I like the interface, if I'm being honest. So there's other ones. There's like, so before there was Mint shut down. You have Copilot, you have Monarch Money, you Need a Budget, and some other ones. I can't think of some other ones, but I think it's really
finding one that
you like, right? Yeah. And my philosophy is I plug in every single card that I have, every single place where I'm spending money, I plug it all into the app so that I know like I don't cheat myself, like, well, I have this credit card in my back pocket that I don't track, but I'm spending on it. And
I used to do, when I first started budgeting, I started deleting transactions.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh,
This doesn't count.
that doesn't count. It took me a couple months to get it right.
Yeah,
I was like, I guess I should be tracking these things.
So like you can use any type of app, like it just depends on which one you want to use, but it's really just about finding out where are you spending. Like it's just for clarity of mind.
Let me say something to that. So I know there's some people that are not going to like really trust apps and stuff like that. They're like, oh, you want me to connect my card and my bank accounts and stuff like that? Yeah. There's always a risk for everything. I'm not going to say there isn't, but the amount of security and stuff like that that's on a lot of these, apps and everything, like it's really good. I think it has more good potential than bad. Now, if you're good with Excel and that works for you, perfectly fine. But if you have to be like Tashina said, you can't be like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to include this. Like, if you're serious about your money, you actually have to do some of these things. So I know you said Copilot's one. You can definitely look into Credit Karma. I think that
they
took
moved Mint over.
Mint over there.
Yeah, it's not as good. Like I feel like it's there's better options.
There's
but you
better
can't
options,
use it.
yeah. Every Dollar, which is Dave Ramsey's one,
Every
that's
Dollar
a
app,
really
yeah.
good one too.
That's the one I use. I like it because I can link all of my accounts. And although I have to like manually categorize things, my favorite thing about it is that I can set like what's called funds on there. So say I set a budget of like $100 for food, but if I only spend $50, and I can carry that
Carries over,
$50 to
yeah.
the next month. That's my favorite thing about it.
You're gonna have to show me that, because I never figured out how to do that. So.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna have to design a whole app because I
Yeah.
was like, none of these apps do it. But then I
Right.
figured out how to do it on every dollar.
No, that's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So there's options out there. So try to find one that works for you.
That works for you, yeah.
Now, one thing about budgeting too, like I feel like before, okay, let me put it this way. Some people don't want to use a budget because they're like concerned. They're like, oh, I don't know how to, I can't follow it or whatever. In my head, I'm like, you're basically living like we used to live before we had GPS. You're like, you're relying on a map. You're just out there
Yeah.
driving like, oh, I think I got to turn right at the tree that's past the river. Like, that's how you're living, right? But a budget's like, now we got GPS. Turn right here. You know exactly what to do. Like, you can see if you're making a mistake, okay, you're making a mistake, whatever. Now you know that and you can take steps to correct it. But if you
Exactly.
don't know, how are
You're
you
in
going to
the
correct
dark.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, you're
So that's what a
definitely in the
budget like is really good about, shining a light on like what's going on, so you can make the corrections you need to make. You can prioritize what you want to prioritize, and then you can have like that freedom knowing, oh, I've budgeted for this. Like, I don't have to, man, I want to go
Not
to this
so
restaurant.
bad,
Like,
yeah.
can I? No, you know, like, oh, I can go and I'm good, you know?
Right.
So that's the part that you want to get to with a budget, that part.
All right, so my next one I wrote is avoid credit card debt at all costs. And this is where I love watching Dave Ramsey's content, because he's always like really big on this. But if you think about how high interest rates are right now,
Yeah.
like I know a lot of credit cards are charging like 22%. If you're carrying a huge balance, like let's say you make a purchase, it's like a certain amount of money, but then you're carrying that interest and they're charging you for it every month. Like at the end of the day, that purchase is not what you made when you initially made it. It's a lot more. So it's super dangerous, especially if you want to make sure that you want to manage your money well. And I know it's easy to fall into credit card debt. So like people will start spending, like that's why I say, like if you're carrying a balance, you aren't a credit card person, you want to be really careful with credit card debt, because the interest rates are just insane. It's almost, in my view, kind of predatory.
It's ridiculous.
How
yeah.
high that they allow credit cards, like how high the interest rates get. So you want to be super careful with that. And there's ways, right? So let's say if you apply for a card and it has like 0% interest for the first year. I don't recommend people doing this, but sometimes you can be strategic and you can make a big purchase and pay it off over time. But you want to make sure that you pay it off before the interest starts kicking in, because
Right,
that
right.
interest will accumulate and it will become
And
a
all
domino
of it
effect.
just goes.
And all of it goes, yeah.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was a thing, I think, with promotional things you have to remember. It's not that, okay, you know what, the first month after that promotion is just going to start with interest. It's like everything that's been compounding for that whole time.
Yes, they're gonna hit you
is
with it.
hitting
Yeah.
you now.
You- you have
So
to realize
that's the
they're-
thing, it's crazy.
There aren't these people out there that are, you know, out of
nice.
the goodness of their
Right.
oh,
They're
you
in
have to pay
business.
this
They're trying to make money.
You know, yeah, they're really
Yeah.
trying to make money off you. So they're really hoping and praying that, like, oh, please don't pay it off, please.
Right.
Please. Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
they actually they
Let me
bank
rake
on
it in, yeah.
Like I work for a bank, right? So it's funny, like when I read like our earnings report, and it's like, oh, we're expecting this much money off of interest. It's like, yeah, you're expecting money off of people not paying off their credit
Exactly.
cards. And granted, it goes towards the top line number, and you know, it's great for the bank because they're in the business of making money. But as a consumer, you want to avoid it at all costs. Like the bank can make money in other ways. They don't have to make money off of you with credit card interest, but you read these articles talking about like how high credit card, like the debt that people are like holding on to for so long, and it can just become a huge problem. So that's why I stress it a lot. Like, you know, try your best to avoid credit card debt, because it's a hole that once you're in it, it's very hard to dig yourself out of. You have to be very intentional about it.
Absolutely.
All right, so my next one is don't only pay attention to a payment, but the overall cost to an item, right? And I think this falls in line with the credit card debt, because you could be like, oh, it's just $20, I'll put on my credit card, and then you're getting hit with interest. Or let's say I've heard people say like, oh, I'm gonna buy a new car, and it's like, well, they go to the dealer, it's like, how much can I get for my payment? And they're like, we'll get it as low as possible for you, but then like the loan is like 8 years, and then you're getting charged like all this interest. So they're like, you want to make sure that you're understanding the overall cost for an item versus looking at a payment, because there's ways to maneuver payments and make them super low, but then when you look at the lifetime of how much you spent on a loan or whatever it is, you spent way more money than you intended to. So it's always good to go in with that knowledge, like here's how much I want to spend totally, and not only focus on payments, because it could be like almost like an illusion.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
All right, and then my last one is that personal finance is a journey. It's a muscle that you have to work at to keep getting better. And this is a really cool one, right? Because you think about life in general, right? And personal finance and how it plays a role into that. It's something that you work at over time. Like I think about when I started investing, or like even when I got my first job, and I credit my parents a lot to like how I understood finance. My mom was like, make sure you save your money. And I was working like at the school district. I think my paychecks were like $200-$300. It wasn't a lot of money. This is like, back in the day. And she's like, from the money that you get, she was like, set aside some money as savings, because you always want to save for a rainy day. And that's why I say personal finance is a journey. It's like you kind of start as an infant, and you can learn over time. You can accelerate your learning by, let's say, using resources, going online, watching people like, let's say, Dave Ramsey, YouTube University. I'm a big advocate. Like, you can learn anything on YouTube if you look for it. So if you want to increase your personal finance journey, you want to really work that muscle. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to personal finance, right? I'll go home, or like after I get back from the gym, or like my day's over, I'll watch videos on TNBC, or I'll watch personal finance videos because I find it interesting. But what I realized that me watching that, it's me working this muscle to kind of learn more and get better at it day by day, because it's kind of like how we talked about at the top of the show. You're never perfect at something when you first start it. It takes time, right? And you may make mistakes, but if you can learn from other people's mistakes who are proudly telling you about it on YouTube, you could be like, all right, well, I'm gonna work that muscle. I'm gonna do it a little bit differently. It's even like when you're in the gym, right? You can watch content. They're like, oh, if you do a workout this way, you can hit the muscle even better. Same way how you can watch personal finance videos and like, oh, I didn't know I can budget this way, or I didn't know about this concept, or how I can use credit cards, or how I can open up a checking account and get a bonus and stuff like that. So it's all these things that you're working your muscle, but it really is a journey. And I implore people, I guess, to kind of, one, you have to choose to start this journey. No one's gonna do it for you. That's why it's personal, right? No one's gonna be like, you need to spend your money better, like, because no one really is gonna care that much about your money versus you. So the more you put your emphasis into it, the more that you put, like, you're more intentional about it, the better that muscle's gonna grow. And then before you know it, the older version of you, or if you accelerate it, it can be even younger, you will be benefiting from all the work that you did in the beginning on that whole journey. So
and that's huge. The muscle thing. One of my favorite things to see on Dave Ramsey's videos is like the people that are like, oh, I have $500,000 in debt. Yeah. And some people are just like, they see a number and they're just like, there's no hope.
It's all over now.
Like, you must be talking about people with like, maybe a car loan or something. No, there's people with massive debt, and they put their mind, and they're like, no, something's got to give, like something inspires them. And like, I think of just like the gym, you see those videos on social media and stuff like that, where it's like, someone, whatever the right word for it is not at their ideal weight, right? And so if you feel like you're at 800 pounds, right, which that exists, then you could kind of feel like, man, the road ahead is really really rough and tough, and you could just decide like, okay, it is what it is. However, there's other people that can make up their mind and just like, no, even though I'm here, maybe I shouldn't have been here, maybe it's my choice, but I can decide to do something now. And to see like those transformation videos where they're just like, okay, you know what, usually right now I'd want to do this, but no, I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to start eating this way. And to see their transformations, it's just like, wow, like you did that. And so I think that's the testimony to all of this, is like, no matter where you are, whether it's bad decisions or not, it's like, what are you going to do today
to change?
And that's your personal journey. So that's
first
really
step
good.
is trying.
Yeah, first step. So money in America.
So we know, right? So we're talking. Let's talk about debt first, right? So we know in America debt is unavoidable, but there are differences between what people would consider good debt or what they would consider bad debt. So let's talk about that. What are some examples of both, or how would you classify what is good debt versus bad debt?
It's tough, right? I think the most acceptable form of debt is like if you're buying a house, right? But you got to be smart about buying a house too, right? So I think that's normal because most people can't afford. They don't have $300,000, $400,000,
especially in this market.
Yeah, especially in this market, right? So it makes sense to take on debt for like a mortgage, right? But you want to be smart about it too. You want to make sure that you're getting the best interest rate.
Right.
You want to make sure that you're not taking on more debt than you actually need. Like, you know, the bank's gonna loan you way more money than you need. And it's up to you to then say, okay, I don't need this much debt. Like, let me live within my means. Let me not spend too much. And I know you've probably like.
I was just thinking, I was like, wow, like not a lot of people understand that. Like they'll get their pre-approval letter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend all
You don't
of
have to
that
spend all
money.
the way up to it, yeah.
Like, cause they want to lend you as much money
As
so they
much
can
as possible.
charge you interest on
Yes.
it. You have to, you know, calculate what makes sense for you. Cause what they're approving you based off of is just like.
It's a formula, essentially.
Yeah, but it's not including like your actual like lifestyle.
Yeah.
So you have to take that into account too. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Which a budget comes very handy because you can
budget comes
plug
very
it in your budget.
Yeah.
What can I afford to spend every month? You know, they may approve you for, you know, 400,000, but you're like, man, my monthly payment on 400,000 is going to be like 3,500. I cannot afford that. So
Yeah.
I need to get something that's going to get me a monthly payment of maybe 2,500. You know, something like that. Those are the thoughts you have to think when it comes to like, especially those big debt,
Right.
Yeah.
big loans.
And that's where the budget thing again is important because so Dave talks about how I believe your mortgage shouldn't be more than 30,
20, they say like 25.
25 to 30, right?
Yeah. I don't
Something
know.
around
It's
there.
somewhere around there.
Of your
but-
income?
Of your income.
Net income.
Your net income. There's a certain percentage that should be definitely nowhere near 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It should
no.
not be
And it
50%.
should probably be in that first, you know, like a
I would say
quarter
20.
of
Yeah.
20,
your
okay,
income.
Yeah.
20.
Like the
okay,
bank
yeah.
is gonna go based off of 35%, but
Okay,
like I
that's
said,
where
that's
it's
not
gonna
going based off of
Right.
your
What you may actually be
lifestyle.
spending, yeah, every month, yeah.
exactly.
So, okay, so a healthy number is about
20,
20.
20%, yeah.
Okay,
Cool.
20%.
Yeah.
So you have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, you
That's
have
like,
to.
I mean, and we know that for Florida, for example, the pricing of housing and then the pay here
Yeah.
is not really.
It's not matching.
It doesn't,
It's not
it doesn't
matching, no.
add up, right?
Yeah.
So let's have a little bit of a conversation here because a lot of our viewers are young adults and adults. So if I'm in the market, I want a house, but I don't make the money that would have me at a 20%, you know, for
Yeah.
a payment. And to go a step further, Dave Ramsey, as much as he doesn't like debt,
Oh, the
he would
15-year
say
mortgage.
15-year
Yeah.
mortgage.
It might be
like-
outdated, you know. Like in this market, it's hard
Yeah,
to.
it's crazy.
saying,
To
make the
it's not
numbers work
realistic.
with a
I'm just
15-year
saying,
You
it's
can
mortgage.
just
pay it
like-
off in 15 years, so why would you put yourself in that hole?
Yeah.
Like you could just double your payments if you want to pay it off
Right.
in 15 years. That would be the more.
So what do
safest
we
way.
do if my pay is just not adding up? It's not like I could just rent always because rent is high.
Yeah.
So like, what is the suggestions?
So I listened to this podcast by the New York Times called The Daily, and they talk about renting versus buying, right? Especially in this market where interest rates are really high. So in my head, I'm like, if you want to buy a house or if you need to buy a house, I think like people with families or with children, they're like, hey, I want to like live in this house. There's ways to go about it, right? Like if you know your income's going to increase over time and it may be kind of tight, maybe, you know, go in and buy a house knowing that things are going to be tight. You got to be smart about it. But there's also some times where it's smarter to rent because, and here's how I philosophize around it, right? If you want to buy a house, but the mortgage to buy or to either rent or buy a house in the same area, it's like, let's say the mortgage is $3,200, but you can rent in that area for $1,500, $1,600. It makes more sense to rent and put that excess money into the stock market and allow that money to grow because, you know, think about it. Sometimes people don't invest and their investment really is their home. So they're purchasing a home. It's a way for them to really have an asset that's going to appreciate over time if they're not investing in the stock market. But you don't want to put yourself in a predicament where you're buying a house and then you end up losing the house, let's say 5 years later, because you're like, oh, I just need to buy a house. You can rent for a couple of years, put that excess money to the stock market, build up a larger down payment so that when you know for sure, like, hey, the market has stabilized or, you know, the numbers make sense now, then you go to purchase a home and you have a larger down payment so that you're even borrowing less money. And the reason why I say this is because the New York Times has a calculator called the rent versus buy calculator. And it's a way where you can plug in numbers that say, does it make more sense for me either to buy a home or rent a home? And the guy who made the calculator came on the podcast, and he was talking about him and his wife. And he was like, yeah, you know, we were living in New York City. He said we were moving to DC for a job, or maybe it was the reverse. And he said that they ended up buying a house when they were like 32 or 33. And he said, looking back now, knowing what I know now, he said he would have just saved up a larger down payment, rented for like those 10 years. And like when he turned 40, he said he would have bought a house. So when it comes to this, I think it's important for people to always run the numbers and see what makes sense for you, because we can generalize as much as possible, but no one knows like your pockets, right? So like you know how much money you have, you know what the interest rate, you know what your credit's looking like. So use those, and the New York Times has one, but there's other websites you can use to kind of figure it out. Like, hey, does it make more sense for me to buy, or does it make sense for me to rent? So you always have to run the numbers.
I would say for someone who feels like they can't afford a house at this moment, sometimes it's, you know, even if you're budgeting and you're managing your money, and sometimes it's not a matter of like I need to save more. Sometimes you just need to make more money.
Make more money.
So you have to invest in yourself. So like, do you need to, you know, get a certification, get a license or something so that you can increase your income? For example, I didn't become a realtor because, well, I became a realtor for a couple of things. One, I wanted extra money, but it was because I wanted to learn the real estate market. So, because I know that real estate is a key to wealth. So I'm like, okay, I don't have the money to buy a bunch of investment properties at the moment, but I can use that extra, you know, $10,000, $12,000 here and there to like save up. Then I would have the money to, you know, buy investment properties. So what did I do? I'm working a full-time job, but I'm working up at 4 o'clock in the morning so I can study for my license, so I can increase my income. So sometimes it's not a matter of like, okay, I'm not, you know, managing my money enough. Sometimes you just have to invest in yourself so that you can increase your income.
That's a good point. You have to sacrifice sometimes.
It goes
And
back to
that's a sacrifice
sacrifice.
because this is the thing. The plan is not to do this for your entire life. Right? But what you're saying is, all right, I have a plan. Again, a lot of money is planning, so the budgeting, all that type of stuff. I have this plan that if I do this for the next whatever amount of years, I'll be able to do this. And you're making marks so that one of Dave's statement is like, live.
I was gonna say
what is it again?
You gotta live like nobody else now, so you can live like nobody else later.
Exactly. So you're gonna have to do some stuff right now. That is just like, man, like, why aren't you seeing you? Why am I not seeing you, Shane? I'm doing what I gotta do right now. You know, I'm grinding it out. And then, guess what? The plan is then, I hope as many people come with me on the journey, right? But there realistically is going to be a time where while you're still grinding, I might be able to relax a little bit more because I've done the work.
You've done the work. You've laid the foundation.
Exactly.
While we have the energy while we're younger, too.
Exactly.
Because it is a little bit harder later on.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about student debt, student loans. It's plaguing this country. It's plaguing me. First, what category would you put that in? Good debt versus bad debt? And then some tips to our younger viewers out there about student debt.
Well, I think student loans can fall into either category.
Okay.
So this may not, you know, be applicable, but I feel like a general rule, if you're you're only getting like a bachelor's degree, for example, and you're coming out with like $100K in debt, but you're not making $100K, you know, like when you come out with that degree, it's not making you that money, then it was like, well, why did you get into that much debt if it wasn't gonna pay off?
Gotcha.
So that's the only thing, like, okay, like you went to dental school, you know, so it's not just, you just got a bunch of student debt, you went to dental school so that you can make higher income, and eventually when you pay it off, it's going to, you know,
it's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
Man.
So it wasn't, at that point, it's an investment. There are some people who were, you know, living off of their student loans, and so like that's why they came out of with so much debt. I was
more than they really needed.
I
hear some stories. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry.
Like control.
I was gonna say, like, I worked during college, and there's like pros and cons with that. Like, I feel like I probably could have had a little bit more fun during college, but I was working 40 hours a week.
Same.
And I don't have any student debt at this moment. So.
Amen.
Yeah.
So
I definitely know that. I was working, but I had like 4 jobs, like through school. I lived at home, like, and I see what you're saying, because I hear stories of people like, I have $120,000 worth of like student debt, And it's like, what's your degree in? Like, oh, it's like, I have a bachelor's in humanities. And I say like this, you're right, it can fall in either camp. You got to think about your return on investment, right?
Yeah, there we go.
When you're putting money into school, you're not just doing it willy-nilly. Like, if you're going to school to become a nurse or an engineer, or you're going to like dental school, or you're going to become a lawyer, more than likely you're going to have to come out with some debt, right? But you know that your return on that investment is going to be great, so that you may come out with student loans, but you have the means now to pay it off. And if you do it faster, it's like you get to reap the benefits of your career and put that money into your pocket. But just don't be like, well, I'm going to school and I can take as many loans. It's like, okay, well, you're going to have to pay back.
Exactly.
You're going to have to pay it back. And if you're not making enough money to pay it back, you're going to find yourself in this debt spiral where all your money is going back to pay student loans. And, you know, you can be angry and blame the government and say that they're predatory and X, Y, and Z. Or you can go to school and work and try to minimize as many loans that you have to take out and try to get scholarships and grants.
Right.
I remember I went to UCF and I remember they used to give me grants on top of grants. I got FAFSA. I lived at home. I worked. You know, I maybe asked my parents to like buy a couple books here and there. My dad was like, all right, fine, like I'll buy a book here and there. I'm like, please, like it's I'm not asking for a lot. Yeah, for education, please. But like you want to minimize as much as possible. And I found myself, and granted, I say I'm grateful for the situation I found myself in, but I'm like, I went to a nearby school, I didn't go out of state, like there's ways that you can go to school and not have to take out so much debt. Or if you do take out debt, you can minimize as much as possible. You just have to be super intentional about it.
Intentional.
It takes intentionality. Yeah.
I'll say I agree. And even for those people with like the humanities degree, for example, right? I was thinking teachers in my head. So teachers are one of those areas where, you know, they get debt. And, you know, sometimes there's programs of like the forgiveness after 5 years and stuff like that. I would say this. I think this age has found ways to make money off of everything. So I'm seeing, for example, teachers on TikTok, right? Or on YouTube. Or like there's different ways where they've been able to find ways to monetize their passion. And so even though as a general understanding, we even hear teachers complain about how much they get paid, right? However, there are some that have found ways of like, okay, you know what? I still love teaching. I want to teach, but have found ways to make that career work for them. And so sometimes you just have to think outside of the box of, okay, if this career choice and path is important for you, then what are you going to do differently than the status quo? And that's just everything else. Even with going to a 9 to 5, like that may be what you're doing. It may work for you or whatever it is, but just really be willing to think outside of the box when it comes to some of our careers. Don't just go to college to go to college. Like you should have a plan for college, right? So when I found out dual enrollment was a thing, I'm dual enrolling. And for some of you that don't know, that's where high school students can start their college classes in high school and get it paid for free. Like you're going to that community college, you're getting the credits, you can come out with an AA degree. Like you can, like all that stuff's covered. And you're doing that, and it required a little bit more work, but you know what, it was worth it because I have now a whole degree that I don't have to worry about. When it comes to scholarships, it takes time, it's annoying to write these, you know, you don't know if you're gonna get something, but it's worth a shot.
And sometimes you have to think like, okay, if someone paid me $1,000, would I write this essay?
Right.
You know, so it's like, okay, it's not.
Exactly. I mean, one time I did a scholarship for a meal plan. Like, and
money is money. I'm like, just money.
And I got it. And guess what? Like, I went to school early to get the breakfast. I stayed late to get the dinner. You know, like they're giving you credit. So like, don't leave free money on the table. Like sacrifice. So if you're gonna go to college, do it right. Like I worked 40 hours just like you. You know, that's the sacrifice. Some people it's trade school. Some people like, you know, it doesn't always have to be
trade school is where it's at, man. Like you look at how much college costs now. I'm like, listen, you can go to school and become an electrician or become a plumber. And if you look at the market dynamics too, it's like all of these people are planning on retiring. So there's only going to be a certain amount of plumbers left. And it's like you could jack up your rates as much as you want because there's really no competition.
I'm laughing because I'm like, did we watch the same video?
I was
thinking the same
I was
thing,
like,
like-
man, like granted, I was like, I should like just try to learn it on the side or something. Like I could do some
Well, I
work,
don't
or, you know?
about that, but I was thinking that like for my brothers, I'm like, yeah, like you don't want to go to school, but like, you know, trade school, you can go do that. You can start a business. You can have the freedom that you want. And you don't want to work for somebody, go to trade school, get
Set
a
up your own
license.
shop, whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly. And then they were saying the same thing about, you know, like there's going to be less people out there because people don't really want to do that kind of work. So, okay, what happens when there's less supply? You get to charge more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's go.
I'll say this funny story. Stuck in was it Denver? Yeah. Stuck in the mountains. Thought I had transportation, no service. I had to get to the airport. I was like, can't get an Uber. There's no service.
Yeah.
So I go inside to the place. I'm like, I need to get a ride. They're like, well, we have this one guy that he'll take you down to the mountain. And I was like, but you know.
Is that really how you got home? Or to the airport?
Yes. Oh my God. People, I took a picture of my suitcase out in the snow. And I was like, I have a story on this. And
I really thought your driver came, though.
No,
Oh,
the
man.
driver never came. Oh yeah, you were on the trip. Yeah, and guess what? I had to pay a guy $100 to drive me 10 minutes to the place with cell service, right?
Hey, you needed to get there.
I needed to get there, right. So the man was there. He's like, I could supply it. Here's the cost. So are you going to choose to not pay me, miss your flight, you know, whatever? I had to weigh the option. And then I was just like, you know what? This is worth $100. What's the point of that saying? I mean, I'm not saying you should price gouge and take advantage of people. However, there's ways to make money.
Yeah,
like this guy only works a couple hours, and he had 3 of us in the car.
Wow.
$300
For 10 minutes, and he was going right back because there's going to be other people in the same predicament. So I'm like, this guy's making more money than me.
He was racking it up.
Racking it up.
And he was
My
telling his
God.
story on the way, and you can't even be mad at it, you know?
It's smart.
It's
Opportunity.
smart. So there's ways to definitely help out there, you know?
Yeah.
So you were asking about good debt versus bad debt. I feel like I learned that in everybody might have heard this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, I read it in middle school, and I feel like I haven't been the same person since.
Yeah.
And he talks about, you know, assets versus liabilities. And he talks about, you know, house being a liability when it's not making you any money. Like, really, it's just debt. So going back to your question about, you know, if you can't afford a mortgage, like, you know, what's so bad about, you know, buying a 3-bedroom house and renting
out
it
the
out?
rooms, yeah.
I did that, and then my mortgage was cut in half. Like, basically, now I am renting a room or renting a house for half than what anybody else is paying rent for. And
House
I'm building,
hacking.
and that's what they're calling it. But
house
we've been
hacking.
doing it for a while. You
Yes.
know, like the Spanish people, island people, like we've been having our family, you know,
Living
sleeping in
happily.
multiple, and then we're all splitting it. Yeah, but they're calling it house hacking now. So like that is one way. Like it's a little bit of a sacrifice. You have to give up your privacy a little bit, but now you're building equity.
Keep the goal in mind.
You're lowering your expenses, and you can take that money and buy another house, and then go and get your dream home. Like your first home doesn't have to be your dream home, and it probably shouldn't be because your 25-year-old self is not going to be the same person making the same amount of money, hopefully, as your like 40-year-old self.
Yeah.
So you're just going to continue growing. So. That's one way to do it too.
That's good. So, saving for the future, when's the best time to start?
Immediately.
Immediately. So it doesn't matter what age.
Out the womb. I really mean it though. Like seriously, like you can set up an account for somebody and immediately start saving. Like
So you're talking about as a parent, it's a good idea. Like, and I know those things are out there, like the Gerber thing.
yeah, they have like a
that's out there.
529 plan you can do for college, or you can. I think even if they don't choose to go to college, it's just. Actually, I'm not saying because I'm not sure. I think they can use that money. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, there's no better time to start saving and investing from just immediately start. If you're not doing it now, like start. Yeah.
If you're starting late, you know, let's say you're my age. Let's say you're 28, watching this, and you're like, oh crap, like you know, I haven't been doing this for 28 years. What would I need to? What's the most important to start when it comes to saving? Like, what accounts would I want to set up first?
Okay, so how do I answer this? I think the first thing before you start, well, you want to save and start with an emergency fund.
Okay.
You want to set up either 3 to 6 months of all your expenses, and you want that to be your baseline. So once you have your emergency fund set up, then it's like, all right, well, maybe I should go to this picture with the order of operations. All right,
And then
okay.
we have a graphic for that. So is this the Ramsey baby steps?
So this is the Ramsey baby steps. And
Which one? This one?
no, the second one.
The second one, Ramsey?
Yep.
Okay.
So baby step number 1, you want to save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. And the reason why you want to have an emergency fund, because you think about investing, the best way for investments to grow is that you just leave it alone, right? You don't want to be dipping into it because then you mess up the magic of compound interest. But when you have an emergency fund, it's like if something happens, you dip into your emergency fund, and then your investments are allowed to grow, and your emergency fund serves as money for an emergency, right? So you don't have to, you can sleep better at night. And there's people, I've seen people do 6 months, 12 months, some people do 2 years. I know when people are nearing retirement, they save like 2 years of their expenses. So if the market were to fluctuate, they don't have to dip into it, and then that can lead into their runway with like how they do their disbursements for their investments. But you want to first start with an emergency fund. It's peace of mind. And it's all about, you know, they say like your miles may vary. Choose how much you want to set up as your emergency fund, but I think $1,000 is a good starting point.
I wouldn't even call $1,000 an emergency fund.
Yeah.
But yes, it is a good start.
Yeah, it's you know, baby steps,
The
right?
baby step,
Baby
yeah.
steps. So I think with the emergency fund, it's something you work at continuously. Like you start with 1,000, but you want to get it up to something way more so that you don't have to like. I know me, I sleep better at night knowing that my emergency fund is present. And as much as I never want to have to dip into my emergency fund, I know that if I have an emergency, I don't have to like lose sleep at night, be like, oh my God, where's this money going to come from? Do I need to put on a credit card for me to spend for? I'm like, I have it, right? So it's there. And then once your emergency fund's set up, you know, so we'll go through the baby steps, right? Baby step number 2 is that you want to pay off all your debt except the house, right? And you want to use the debt snowball. Yeah.
Okay, Dave.
Yeah. So you want
with the times.
change it with the times, right? So you want to use the debt snowball, and there's different ways you can kind of like tackle debt. You can either start tackling the one with the highest interest, or I think what Dave Ramsey proposes that you start hitting the smallest balance. And the reason why he says that, because like mathematically it makes more sense to hit the ones with the higher balance, but this is more so for people who may not know a lot about personal finance. And the reason why he says start with the smallest balance is because you want to get the momentum going. So you want to see these small wins, and it's like, wow, I can really pay off my debt. Like it's not something that's crazy foreign. And you look at his show, like there's a lady on there, her name is Jade. I think her and her husband had like $400,000 worth of like debt altogether. Like I listened to her story, she talked about, she's like, yeah, we sat down, we add up everything, and she was like, oh my God, like this is so much debt. But I think they paid it off within
2 to 3 years.
2-3 years.
It's crazy.
2-3 years. Paying off $400,000 worth of debt. So it's all about actually doing the practice of doing it, paying off debt, and just realizing that like, hey, I'm not stopping until it's all gone, right?
Yeah.
All right. So baby step number 3 is that you save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund, and then you would like I said, like you just want to keep building on your emergency fund. And I would tell you, I feel like it's like beginner is $1,000. You know, the median is like 3 to 6 months, and like advanced is like a year and a half, 2 years. Because really, when you have 2 years worth of savings, let's say if you're like get laid off and lose your job, it's like,
Who cares?
who cares? Like,
You're not panicking.
like, you're not
Right,
panicking.
right,
You're just
right.
like, and if anything, you're probably gonna spend less because you lost your job. So that emergency fund is gonna last you a really, really long time. And it's really peace of mind. I think that's the best thing that comes out of having the emergency fund. You don't lose sleep over, is something gonna happen in my car? Like, or if you own a home, it's like, did something break, or I'm gonna have to like pay all this money now. It's like, it's covered. You have it.
And let me add to that. Okay. So I think a lot of times what we said at the beginning of the show is also being in control in a sense. So when you put yourself in these type of situations, you're letting those situations control you, right? So let's say, you know, you get laid off, or you decide you might have to leave this job for, you know, some specific reason, like the treatment's not good, mental health, whatever it is. People stay where they might not need to be because out of obligation, right? And so if you're thinking about your bill, it's smart to think about your bills for sure. But if you're not in that position, then you have you can walk. Like the control is now in your hand of like, you know what? I actually do not have to put up with this. And you can walk out with a smile on your face, not having to stress because you have a plan in place.
No, literally, I was going to say that. I was going to, like, Dave Ramsey says a lot of things. I don't necessarily agree with all of them. But one of the things that he says is really good is about how, like, when you're in debt, you're a slave. I'm like, that's
You
a
are a
biblical
slave,
thing.
yeah.
They talk about how the lender's the master and the other person's like basically the slave. And I'm like, you really can't be like that. You can be a slave to your job because you're like, if I quit, well, how am I going to pay my bills? But once you get rid of that debt, once you actually save up an emergency fund, if you don't like a job, you're
leave.
gone. You're like, if I don't want to come in today, I don't got to. Like, you're not a slave. You actually have freedom. You can make the choices you want to make. And it's that really stuck out to me because I'm like, oh my gosh, I really want to be there.
Yeah.
Like, I
That's
want to have
freedom.
that freedom where I don't have to,
They say like escaping the rat race.
Yeah.
That's really what
That's
it
his
is.
game.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's Robert Kiyosaki's game.
Oh, that's what he says?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
It's an
escaping the
actual
rat
game
race.
of like escaping the rat race.
Oh, it's an actual game?
Yeah.
I need to check that out.
I have it.
Yeah, I played one
Oh, is
night.
that the game you bought for your dad?
Yeah.
Did you ever play it?
We tried.
That's funny.
We did
Future
try.
game night?
Yeah, right. But honestly, like going back to like, feeling like a slave, that's what I think about when I think about a car payment. Because, going back to good debt versus bad debt, a car is not making me money. Even on Turo, like we looked at the math, like, is it gonna make me that much money?
Yeah.
Buying a house, yes, I could make equity, I
Yes.
could rent, I could get cash flow, rental income.
Right.
Buying a car, what is that
just
actually giving
depreciates.
me? Exactly.
Yeah. Right,
Honestly, one thing that I learned, because out of high school, I had my dad was buying me like $2,000 cars, so like they weren't really reliable. So when I graduated college, I'm like, okay, I want a car that's reliable. I went and bought a brand new car,
Why are we
11
living the
miles
same
on it.
life?
11 miles on it. It was great. I mean, I still drive that car to this day. I love my car, honestly. But I wouldn't do that again because one, it depreciated. I mean, actually, since the pandemic,
It went up.
It
My
did.
car, I was like, this is crazy. I'm getting like the car fan. I was like,
Yeah, I could kind of sell it for
Yeah, I
the
could sell it
same.
for some money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like maybe not the same, but for the most part, it definitely does depreciate. Again, not like a house. So yeah, I think of a car loan like financial slavery. Going back to savings, one thing that works for me is treating my savings like a bill. So when I'm managing my money, I'm looking at all of my income versus like my bills and expenses. My savings, the automatic draft for my savings is a bill. So I'm like, okay, now what? After all of that, what do I have left over to spend?
Paying
so when you
yourself
prioritize
first.
it, yes,
Yes,
that
paying
might be
yourself
another
first.
Robert Kiyosaki.
It might be.
thing.
Like Ramit says it too. Like he's like, oh, you want to pay yourself first. And
Yeah.
I think it's really important to think of savings like that because if all your money is going towards all these people, like, what are you doing for yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you got your car loan, you got the credit card debt, you got all these things that you're paying off. It's like when do you actually use your money for things that are important to you or are helping you advance in life?
Right.
And I feel the same with you, like with the car. Like
Yeah.
I remember. I was driving my car. I had like this like used car, and I was driving back from work. And I was working at Universal at the time, and I'm getting home, and I break down on I-4. And I remember calling my dad. I was like, "Yo,"
Classic.
I was like, "This." And it happened like twice within like a 3-week span. I was like, "That's it. Like, I'm gonna buy a new car." I told my dad. He was like, "You sure you want to buy a new car?" I was like,
Yeah.
"I'm buying a new car."
Yeah.
Now, granted, my car is paid off. I'm driving that thing till the wheels fall off. Like I
Right.
don't have any intention of buying a new car unless like. I save up cash for it. That's really my
Yeah,
mentality. I'm like, if I'm
yeah.
gonna buy a new car, I'm gonna buy it cash.
Yeah.
But
So I have two things. Go ahead.
what was I gonna say? But yeah, like it's really important because car it's just sucking in. A lot of people are in. We think about like you said, like debt is like chains and slavery.
Yeah.
Car loans are killing people in this country. When I saw that the average car loan right now is like $1,000 a month,
That is
I just
insane.
equate that. I'm like, if you were investing $1,000 into the stock market
Man.
and just looking at that from like a 15, 20-year horizon, if people only realize the potential for that money versus putting it into a depreciating asset, like you said, it's like that money can grow so much. But again, if cars are your thing and that's where you want to be really happy and you buy cars, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think people have to say on the flip side, like, am I investing? Like, if you're investing and you're doing your savings and you have enough money that you can get $1,000 car loan, in my head, I'm like, just save up the cash to buy it. But if you want to take out the loan, by all means, go ahead. But pay it off as soon as possible. But like, it really is shackles. And I think it's great being debt free because all the money you make, it's like
It's yours.
It's yours.
It's your money.
It is
Oh my
100% yours.
goodness.
Like when I see, I'm like, oh, like I'm not like paying any debt. Like, granted, my big expense is probably like my rent right now, but like outside of that, it's like you're sitting pretty, and it's a really good feeling. I think that other people can also experience that. Like, it's just like you have to put yourself in that mindset that you don't have to keep up with the Joneses, as they say. Like, you don't have to do something. Who are you trying to impress?
Right.
Like,
the same people who, you know, don't have savings.
Who also don't have savings. It's like everyone's trying to show up to each other. It's like you're all in the same predicament. It's like, well, actually, I don't care how other people may view how I'm doing. It's like you just have to be very intentional about it. But yeah, living debt free, I think it's the best way to live. And Dave preaches that. And I think, especially from a religious perspective, when you think about it, it's like when you're debt free, you have more money to give. So like, let's say you can be more impactful with your dollars. Somebody's hurting, and like they're like, it's crazy. Let me not say it's crazy to me. Like, I realize that some people, it's like $100 windfall. They can't absorb it. Imagine you could be in that position. It's like, hey, I don't really have any debt. Like, I have this excess money, $100, and it could be a lifesaver for people. It's like, wow, like I would have had to get a payday loan, or I would have had to put this on the credit card. It's like, well, here's a gift for you. Like, I'll give you $100. Don't worry about it. And I think in those types of acts of service, and like, I feel like they're also acts of love. It's like, hey, don't worry about it. I got it for you.
Honestly, that's probably a driving force for me to like continue, because I'm like, I don't want anyone in my family to like ever be in a position where like I'm not making enough to help them.
Yes.
You know, like to see them like, you know, be in a position and I'm like, I can't do anything about it. I need to make more money.
Yeah.
Like, nobody around me
we should be able to be like that
love.
Resource for people. Yeah.
Resource.
And I think that's how God intended it too. It's like,
for sure, it's community.
Yeah.
One thing Dave Ramsey said that I was just like, wow, this is a little bit drastic, but it's necessary for some people. You might be in a position where you might have to sell in order to recover. And so when you were talking about like car loans, for example, right? Until you get rid of that payment, some people are always going to be like bound, right?
Yeah.
And depends on even how long the payment's for. So let's say, you know, at some point, the payment amount of years would be like 5 years on average. And like you said, it's been growing. You're like, oh, okay, we can bring it down to your comfortable monthly payment, or we can keep it at 5 or whatever.
It's an 8-year loan.
Yeah,
it's like,
what? And so, like in some situations, you might have to make the very important decision of, I might have to sell this, right? And I might have to back up and get something I can afford, or get that used car, or whatever it is. Same thing with the house. Like, in some situations, depending on where you are at and how it is, like, you might have to have a real conversation of, I think he said in an episode, I wonder how you feel about this as a realtor, but he was saying that, you know, if the value of your house is up, right?
Yeah.
But you have a bunch of debt, there might be some scenarios where it is useful to sell it, pay off all your debt, and now you're going to be able to get.
That's what he did. I think he had to start over. Like,
he had to actually
sell all his stuff.
Yeah. He sold all his stuff. He was able to pay off all his debt, and then this is where living like no one else now goes into play. Where I don't even know what his house looks like now, but it's just like
massive.
Yeah, you might have to make a decision to like, I gotta let some of this stuff go. It's going to be painful, but that's how you get to some freedom.
I had a friend who actually had to do that. Not selling a house, but she had to sell her car. And it was funny because I don't think she'll watch this, right? So I won't name any names. It was like one of my first jobs out of college, and I was working at like this, essentially like a call center, right? And she had the same car as the CFO. It was like a BMW, a 3 Series BMW. I remember the time we were all going to lunch, and he actually thought his car was her car. And I remember her telling me, she was like, I was paying so much for that car, Jamal. She was like, you know what she did? She sold the car, she bought like a cheap used car, and then she used her extra money to kind of get herself sound. And I remember she told me, she was like, me selling that car was like the best decision that I made, because she was like, the car was eating into all my money. All my money was going to paying this car note and then the insurance. And she was like, now she's doing great. Like, she became a realtor, selling houses. Like, she has like this hustle mindset. And I like seeing that. She got to the point, she was like, yo, I honestly just stopped caring how people would have thought about it. It's like, if you need to dig yourself out of a hole, remember, this hole is your own hole. No one's sharing the situation with you. So you can't be thinking to yourself like, oh, well, what if people say I bought this new car and I have to sell it, or I bought this house and I can't afford it, or whichever it may be. It's like, you just don't care what people think. It's like, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make myself financially secure. And I always think about like this, like, your future self is going to appreciate what you did
for sure.
because you weren't worried about what so-and-so may say. It's like, my head is focused, I'm heads down on my goals, and nothing's stopping me from getting it.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you why real estate is so amazing. Because yes, if you find yourself in a hole and your house, has a bunch of equity in it, you can sell it to get that equity out. But another reason why people should treat their credit with so much importance is because you can leverage that.
Yes.
So that is not the only way to tap into your equity. If you have good credit, you can pull out a line of credit, you can pull out, do a cash out refinance and pull out that equity and apply it to, other debt. And then that's one way to consolidate your debt. Now you only have a mortgage to pay because you use your equity to pay off your credit, your other loans and things like that. So it's not the only option. And that's not an option that you have with cars, let me just say.
Yeah, right.
Another reason why cars
There's probably
are
no
not
equity
where
in the
it's
car
at.
either.
Exactly.
None.
I want to talk about, since we were talking about bad cars,
Yeah.
I went from having a car where I had to carry a battery pack to
Lord.
recharge it every time I needed to start it.
Yeah.
That's why, that was one of the reasons, I got to get a new car. That's reliable. And I did kind of come to a conclusion of, okay, if I ever get a new car, then I have to, I have to pay cash for it, right? So that was my baby, understanding of it. And then I was talking to my father, and he bought 2 trucks that he had a car payment on, and I'm like, what are you doing? Why do you have a car
You lied
payment?
to me, man.
Yeah, I was like,
You said this was bad.
Yeah, why do you have a car payment? And then he's like, okay, you see this property? The monthly rent on that is paying
It's
for that
covering
truck.
it, yeah.
So that's, again, difference between assets versus liabilities. Yeah, you can have a car payment, but how are you getting the money for that payment? Are you working for it, or is
Yeah.
passive income paying for it?
Yeah,
So,
it's like that cash flow. I always
Yeah.
thought about it just you want to build as much margin into how much you're bringing in versus what you really need. And the bigger that spread is,
Yeah.
the more
Yeah.
freedom that you have.
Exactly.
And that's why it goes back to the thing I said about, it's never about how much money you make. It's always about how much you spend, because you can make a lot of money, but if you're spending everything, then you're finding yourself in that predicament. But if you have a lot of margin where you're bringing in so much money, but then your bills are on a fraction, a fraction of what you're bringing in. Yeah, by all means, go do what you're doing. If you're saving and investing, and you have a lot of margin in your budget, and you want to spend for that, by all means, and it brings you happiness, I think you've done the hard work to bring in enough money that you can absolutely treat yourself and do these things. But it's when that margin is really, really tight, that's when people find themselves in predicaments okay, you may not be making the best decision with what you're doing right now. So you
Yeah.
want to really give it really a lot of critical thought.
And one thing I realized with the emergency fund, why it's so important, because with my car, it's paid off, but I did have to replace the computer in it, which is apparently a thing.
Yeah.
And it cost me $2,000.
You just paid it.
And I just paid it, and I
Yeah.
was like, dang, $2,000, but dang, what if I didn't have the money?
Right.
I can only imagine, what situation I would be in. And then someone was telling me, it's time for a new car.
No, it's
and I'm
not.
like, $2,000 or $300, I was paying $300 a month. 300, how?
And that's relatively low.
Yeah, I'm like, it's
It's
still
hard to
cheaper for
get
me
that
to buy
now.
the
I feel like we're
computer.
just my car note was 3-4. My car is paid off, but when I was paying, it was $340.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you buy in 2017?
I bought my car in 2018.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We learned a lot here. That's crazy. I think I'm actually glad you guys shared real life examples too.
Yeah.
I think that's important because people don't always, see that portion of it. And even if you get a car that you really want, think about a higher down payment so you have a lower
Right.
Lower
payment.
amount.
Right.
Don't
Exactly.
just take okay, I'm gonna, this is the monthly payment, One thing that worked for me with getting my car payment down, so the plan is I'll be able to, it's definitely going to be paid off by the end of the year, if not by the summer. And so one of the things that worked for me, and I want you to kind of think about a tip that you would give that you use to help you in your journey. I pay bills every time I get paid. So like you said with the
Yeah.
credit card,
Immediately.
that was one of the best tips I ever heard. It's just instead of waiting for the monthly where you're gonna just be paying whatever
huge
that
chunk.
is, right? Split it up. So when I heard that I did it with my car note, each time I'm just okay, instead of, if my car note's $400, right?
Yeah.
If I waited for the month and I, wanted to pay a little bit extra to bring it down, maybe I'm doing $450, right? But guess what? What if every time I get paid, I do $250? Guess what? Now that monthly payment's $500, and now I'm bringing down the amount
chipping
of
down
time.
at
I'm
it.
chipping down.
That's
at
the
it,
way to do
you
it.
know, and that's the way to do it. So like, you might want to consider, instead of just one time a month, like breaking it down. And look, I take myself to the bank almost every month to make sure my extra payment's going on principal.
Principal, yeah.
Yeah,
You gotta call
I'm
them
not
like,
just paying it on the app or
yeah, yeah.
I
Let me
call
tell
them,
you-
Yeah.
go in the branch and say like, hey, I want this on
the
principal.
principal.
And then the next day I'm looking at the app, I'm like, yeah,
Now it's going down.
This is going down. So like, that's, you know, one of my tips I would give to people. So like, what's
Yeah.
some of the ones that's worked for you that
so
you would give?
what I do, and I did this for a while. I have a calendar. On my calendar, I put when certain bills come out, and so I can see. And I put everything on my calendar. But I put when I get paid. I put the bills, right? So I can see, okay, if I'm going to get paid here this amount, I have these bills that are going to come out in this time period, then I'm going to get paid again, right? So I can see what the excess is. So I paid off my car in like, let's say a year. I paid off my car in a year. Everything extra, like when I would have like that payday, the bills for those next 2 weeks, I would look at that, okay, I have the extra, put a little buffer, and then everything else, I am putting like a madman towards the debt that I want to bring down, which at that time was my car. And I was able to just like chunk that bad boy down, and it was, the good thing about like, again, having a budget and like having this type of plan is you get to, when you see each month the like fruits of your labor, it almost encourages you like
feels
to
great.
keep going. Like, you know, when you open the app and you're like, oh yeah. Oh yeah, you just see that thing just drop and you're like, okay, I can do this, you know? Whereas sometimes if you like wait till like the end of the month, then it's just like, oh, it's spending day. You're just gonna be like, oh, my bank account dropped like a rocket, you know? Like, and then you look at what little bit you have left. But spreading it out, I think 2 weeks is a good measure. Doing it like as you get paid is a really good measure to keep you accountable to, because if you do it more often, you're gonna get in that routine. Whereas like every month, it'll almost be like starting over again, you know? But 2 weeks, it's like, okay, this is my routine. Every 2 weeks I do this. It's gonna keep
financial muscle, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Working
The
your financial
more
muscle.
often you work it out, yeah.
I do actually the same thing, except for, so I have the calendar, but then I also have it in a list, and I have all my bills come out of one account. So like most of them, except for my mortgage, comes out automatically from this one account. So I'm doing the same thing, looking at like, okay, this is how much funds are required in this account for this paycheck. So I'm funding that account. But then I also have like, what works for me, because I just need to like have different buckets. So I have multiple accounts. So I have my bills account, my emergency fund. This may not be like the best financial advice, but I also have like a second emergency fund that I say like doesn't exist. I'm like, that money does not exist. Like, this is my savings. But when I had to come out of pocket for like that $2,000, it's like, oh, okay, I'm building this fund up, but if another emergency comes up, I still have that money that doesn't exist. Yeah. And then with the credit card, I have another account for all of my spending. So if I see like, okay, my credit card balance should always kind of be in line with what's in that checking account, so that there's always actual cash to pay that balance.
Right. You're not spending money you don't have.
Not spending money that I don't have. Yeah. So like separating it out like that helps me. Even like you told me like you have like travel savings. So I have a travel account that's like separate from from my emergency fund. Yeah. So like that's what helps with me, so that I can like have a visual of like, okay, this is where like all of this money is. But doing it with like the 2 weeks is helpful, so that I always know like if something's gonna come out early, then there's funds in there for it.
You guys will like the budget app. I use Copilot Money because they have this thing where it recognizes like monthly charges. So it already allocates it, like they have like this like categories, right? It's like, okay, like you're gonna be spending this much for subscriptions or whatever bills it is.
Right.
And like use just a consistent number. So it tells you at the top of the month, like, oh, here's how much that you're already expected to spend for all of these things that fall into it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Did you have yours?
Which one?
And you've kind of been sharing like different things you've been doing, but we were sharing like our tip, like that major tip that kind of like revolutionized how your
Oh, maybe budgeting. Well,
Doesn't-
actually, no. Yeah, budgeting, I guess.
budgeting?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted you to allow you to kind of like finish the list of the baby steps. So if
Oh, yeah.
just break it down. For
All right, so we left off at baby step 3. So baby step 4 is investing 15% of your household income into retirement. And this one, I'm really a big proponent of investing. I think that investing is a way for everyday people to be really, really wealthy. And we see it all the time. And we talked about teachers earlier, and I want to add this nugget, right? Would you know that Ramsey did a study on millionaires, and the top 5 categories, I can't remember what the occupations were, but teachers were in the top
way.
5, 100%.
What
And he
on
explained it
earth?
like this, right? Teachers may not make a lot of money, but one thing that they know how to do is they're very intentional about the money that they make, right? And if you think about investing and becoming a millionaire, is that if you do it consistently, and you can start really small, like even like $200 a month, $250 a month. If you invest $200 something a month for like 30 years, you'll have $1 million. And that's just compounding, going over time. So if you think about it even in a different way, that's just $200. Let's say you put way more.
Right.
And you speed up that timeline, you can hit it way faster. So that's another thing. Like baby step 4, investing 15% of your household income into retirement. Baby step 6 is save for your children's college fund. And we talked about different ways of doing that. You could do like a regular savings account, or you can do like a 529 plan. I don't know exactly how the details work because I don't have children, but I think that you can invest that money, and maybe there's something behind it. But if you have kids and you want to figure out a college fund, look into it. I think that's available to you as an option. Baby step 6, pay off your home early. You think about like getting closer to retirement. You don't want to be in a predicament where like you're paying a mortgage. So like the faster you pay off your house, that again, it goes into that whole thing with the margin, right? You're building way more margin into your budget, especially as a retiree, where you don't have to spend a lot, your house is paid off, and then you can go on your vacations or whichever you want to do in retirement, live your happy life.
Anybody
right?
just think about like, if I said, oh, I'll give you an extra $2,000 a month. Like,
Right.
wow. That's
Right.
like, holy crap, $2,000 a month?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's literally what paying off your home is. You know, you literally have an extra $2,000 every single month. That's huge. It's huge.
You'd be surprised. There's a lot of Americans right now with paid off houses. Like there's a lot of people who have paid off houses and they're sitting on a lot of equity, and they're just really sitting pretty. So, all right. And then baby step 7 is build wealth and give, and it kind of goes to what we were talking about earlier about when people are in a financial predicament and you've done all the hard work yourself to build wealth. You're in a great position to give freely, right? Like if there's a cause or there's people who are in need, or you talked about like your family members, like you don't want them to be in a predicament where you can't help them out. When you've done this groundwork for yourself, it puts you in a perfect position to help your family members, help a person in need, support your church, feed the hungry, help the sick and all that stuff. So I think it's just a phenomenal way. And Dave Ramsey gets a lot of flack for his content. And, granted, I don't agree 100% with him, but I don't agree 100% with anybody.
Right.
But there's so many great things that you can learn from these concepts when it comes to finance. And maybe you didn't learn it. You didn't learn it in school. You didn't learn it at home. Maybe your parents aren't a really good example, or maybe whatever it may be. But once you start doing these things, I've seen people go on his show and do like the debt-free scream, where they're like, I'm debt free, and you like, I like watching it, and I'm like, you just see the joy in their face because you maybe don't know all the hard work that they put in, but you know that they were intentional about what they did, and they stuck to their journey, and now they're in a position where they're debt free, and they've built wealth, and they can give and stuff like that, and I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do is, as we're getting ready to wrap up, there's a couple of things I want to make sure that you can go over, right? And kind of give people a starting place. Some of these things you're going to have to take a picture of or a screenshot, whatever it is when you see it on the screen. I want you to be able to go over the financial order operation.
Yeah.
But if Lee, our person, can kind of put the graphic up that shows compounding interest, and that kind of gives an example. Can you just really quickly walk
talk
them
about
through
compounding
and what they are seeing?
So I think compounding is one of the most fascinating things about investing, and I'm gonna use Warren Buffett as an example, right? We know Warren Buffett is like this billionaire, but Warren Buffett didn't really start making, I don't think he hit his first billion until he was like 50 something. but he started investing when he was like 13. And over time, he just found ways to put more money into the stock market and as it grows. So if you look at this visual, right, it says saving your first $1 million, and this is just you investing 10%, not 10%, $10,000 at a 7% return. And in this visual, you look at it, it says it takes 7.8, so let's round up to like 8 years to save your first 100,000. But as time goes on, for you to get your next 100,000, it becomes much quicker because your army of dollar bills is working much harder for you in the background. To the point where, so 5 years it takes to get 200,000, 4 years to get 300,000, 3 years to get 400,000, and then it slowly starts decreasing. And that's just you investing $10,000 a year. So if you start putting in way more money into the stock market, and I think this is just in the S&P 500, you start to conceptualize that, wow, like anybody really can become a millionaire because it takes you being diligent, putting the money into the market, and then just letting time do its thing. And you know, when you invest in the stock market, these companies, they pay you, like they pay out dividends. And if you reinvest those dividends, like it starts small. When I first started investing, I remember my dividends were like 3 cents, 4 cents. I remember showing my mom, she was like, you gotta be careful with that investing stuff. I was like, trust me, I know what I'm doing. And now my dividends are not 3 cents anymore, right? Like you hit it by quarter and like the numbers go up, and then if you track it, because you're putting in more money, they're now paying you more money for these dividends. And then if you put that money back in, you're now putting back more money, you're getting more dividends for the money you put in, and you just see that cycle, right? And Dave Ramsey conceptualized like a snowball.
Yeah.
So you think about a snowball starting at the top of the mountain, and it starts really small. But as time goes on and it picks up more speed and it picks up more snow, it becomes really, really big to the point where you can't even stop it. And they always say like the first 100,000 is the hardest because it's all you. Like all that money you're putting in is you laying the groundwork. But after you hit 100,000, then your money starts working for you. And it's like, oh, like, yes, I'm still contributing, but then I'm getting a lot more for what I invested. And if you just put in way more money, you speed up this timeline. So with this example, $10,000 at a 7% return, and really the market historically has returned like 10%, right? So, and some years it goes up, some years it goes down, but if you put in way more money and the stock market's on your side, and you know, we don't know what the future is gonna hold, but the market's gonna boom like with AI and stuff like that, and companies are gonna make money, right? And I think the stock market's just really run off of greed, so everyone's trying to make money, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, I would say. But it just shows you the potential that yes, you can become a millionaire. And we probably know millionaires in our day-to-day life, right? You got people who are retired, they're probably sitting on $1 million with their retirement, or maybe even not as much as like $1 million, but they've been investing in a 401k for a long time. They've been getting the company match, and then they have enough money to live off of. And then, you know, there's this concept like when you put in this money to the stock market, they call it a 4% rule, right? So you have enough of your money in investments where I talked about the dividends where you're getting paid a certain amount every year. You can literally take money out of your investment portfolio. So let's say you take out 4%, but then the market's returning 10 or 12%. Your money's still growing. So even as you're taking out the money,
it's still going up.
Your money's still growing because you're getting a really good return, and it sets you up very nicely. And that's what Dave Ramsey talks about, Ramit Sethi talks about. And I think the emphasis I want to put is that it's very possible. It just takes time. You have to really commit to it.
You have to start.
You have to start. The first thing is starting, right? Once you start, and the first 100,000, it's hard, right? Like it gets really hard, and you're just like, man, like this is taking forever. And you talked about how if you want to do certain things, you got to make more money. So like, for me, I'm like, oh, when I saw like the beauty of the stock market, I was like, yeah, like I need to make way more money so I can put
it in
way more money into the stock market so I can speed up this timeline and get there faster. And it's all a mindset, right? You have to commit to it, and you always have to buy. You have to just really look at it from the dollar cost averaging, where the market's going up, it's going down, and sometimes it can go down for a while, right? Like let's say it goes down all year, and like all the money you're putting in, it's like really bad. And that was the example. I think 2022 was like that. Like the market slid like, I think like 20%, and then last year the market returned back like 23%. And right now the market's sitting at probably like a 7-8% return. We still got a couple months to go, right? So like till the end of the year, but you just see like the money will grow, and all you have to do is start. And I'll emphasize to say, there's people who invest, but like, you know, they're day trading, right? I don't recommend day trading, and I know there's people who are like, well, my friend made $50,000 day trading, and they were like doing options and stuff like that. Yes, but I feel like most people never tell you about their losses. They tell you about like, I made like $30,000. It's like, all right, like how much are you up overall? Like, well, I'm still down 20,000. Okay, I know for me, when it comes to investing, I don't like losing money, and I know there's this process that has worked consistently over the years, and I've seen people with the results, and it's kind of consistent. I will say it is very consistent. If you're buying into the S&P 500 and you're investing money over a long period of time, you will end up with more. But if you're day trading, you kind of mess up the beauty of compound interest, because the money's coming in, it's coming out. You're moving it in versus just leaving it and letting it grow. So this visual, I saved this in my photos album, because I like to look at it and like remind myself, like,
This is where I'm going.
this is where I'm going. Don't be deterred, like if the market were to slide, because I know that time is really just that main driver for investments, right? Like over time, and I've seen it myself, like as I track my investments and I look at how it grows, I just see this, like this arch, right? Like you put in more money, your money is growing, and it just goes up higher and higher. But if you lose focus, then you'll be deterred, and then you like lose hope, and then you quit. But it's like you have to consistently be at it, like just always putting in money. So
Okay. Love that. So this is the final part, the financial order of operations. Now, some of it you've covered,
Yeah.
so you'll be able to race through some, but the ones that we haven't, kind of like take us quickly through it so people can kind of understand what to look for.
right. So if you want to learn more about this, I highly suggest you watch the Money Guys show on YouTube. There's two guys, and it's super beneficial. I like listening to their content all the time. But the first one is deductibles are covered. So it's kind of like you want to make sure your insurance is covered, because I think the number one way that people file for bankruptcy in this country is through medical debt. So you want to make sure that you have insurance and that you're covered when it comes to that. And number two, your employer match. This is literally free money that your company is giving you, whether that's through a 401k. You want to make sure that you're investing money in your company's 401k, especially if they're giving a match. You want to invest as much as possible. Well, the minimum to get the company match, because it's free money. Number three, you want to get rid of high interest debt. Debt is like gravity. It's pulling down your financial well-being. You want to get it out the way as much as possible. Emergency reserves, we've talked about that. Now, the Roth and the HSA. Now, the Roth is another magical thing, right? So this is money that you put in after tax. You can invest this money into the stock market, and then you don't have to pay tax on it after you're 55. I think it's like 55. All the money that's there is yours. You don't have to pay taxes on it. And the HSA is another great thing. And you want to look into the details, right? So if you have a lot of medical bills and stuff like that, maybe the HSA isn't right for you. But the HSA, you're putting this money in pre-tax. It's allowed to grow without any tax. And you can withdraw the money for health-related items as you hit retirement age. And you don't have to pay tax on it. There's more details. I don't want to say wrong information here, so look into an HSA. Max out your retirement. You want to put in as much money as possible that can keep you financially sound for putting money into retirement. Hyperaccumulation is really what I talked about with compound interest, just letting the money accumulate and grow. And then you want to prepay future expenses. Like if you know you have a huge expense coming up, and that, like I talked about with the cars, like let's say I do want to buy a new car. Start saving for it. Like start setting aside the money. Now granted, you can go out and get a loan and you can pay the interest, but if you know that you have the money and you have a goal to say in 5 years I want to buy a new car, or in 5 years I want to go back to school and get a degree, set aside the money so you can pay for it cash. And then low interest debt, which is your house, right? You want to then knock that out.
And so like you said, on this graphic, it says go to themoneyguy.com/resources.
Yeah.
And you're saying he also has a show. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, okay, perfect. So, one thing that we have that I want to share that Jamal actually, and we call it Jamal's financial resources list. There's like some books on here that he definitely recommends to read. So, we see The Intelligent Investor, One Up on Wall Street, The Psychology of Money, I Will Teach You to Be Rich,
Yeah.
The Intelligent Investor, The Millionaire Next Door, and Atomic Habits. So out of all 7 of these books, which is like, if I wanted to start with one, which one would I start with?
So I would start with either The Psychology of Money or I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
Okay.
I feel like The Psychology of Money it's helping you understand foundational things about money because we're not learning it in school and sometimes our parents aren't the best example, right? So read that book. It's not super long. I would say like you can read it and it depends on how fast you want to read, right? But you know, it's a good book to understand foundational things. And then I Will Teach You to Be Rich is another great one. And I'm a huge proponent of Ramit, Sethi. I feel like his content is great. It helped me shift my focus on just saving everything and investing all my money to like, okay, how do I do this and live richly? Like, how do I put money towards things that are super important to me while still maintaining really good financial habits? The others, it depends, right? If you really want to get like really in the weeds of investing, then The Intelligent Investor, and then
Did I type the same thing
you
twice?
did type it twice.
I just noticed that.
So The
I was like,
Intelligent
I missed that
Investor
book.
is a great book about how do you identify really good companies. Like, you don't just want to buy, if you're going to buy individual stocks, you want to do your due diligence. You want to understand how much they're bringing in, how much debt do they have, what's their moat. Like, I'll use like Apple, for example. Apple is a brand. Right, people, and I'm a person. I have the Apple Watch. I have an Apple phone. I'm plugged in. Right, that's really good to see for an investing standpoint. Because, you know, like people are locked into this company. They're gonna make money. Now, granted, their stock slid a little bit, but I think it's just a really sound foundation that they have. So it's really good. The Intelligent Investor helps you identify companies like that. And then also One Up on Wall Street, Peter Lynch is like the GOAT when it comes to investing. So he has really good concepts in that book as well if you really want to learn into that. But if you're a person who doesn't want to learn about technical analysis for companies and you just want to like take Easy Street, simply buy an S&P 500 index fund, put your money in there and forget about it. And just invest it over time, keep putting money in, and literally don't think about it, and then your future self will be super happy that you did exactly that.
Yep, sacrifice today. So we're going to put all of this stuff on thewalklive.org as well, but like I said, hopefully you've taken some pictures, you've thought about some things, and everybody, no matter where you're at, you can take at least one thing where you're just like, okay, you know what? I haven't thought of it about it this way. I've never done this. Maybe it's worth a shot. So again, we're not responsible for your financial decisions.
I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm just learning stuff and I'm sharing it with people.
Yeah, it's definitely worth considering it. And well, the one thing I'll say, kind of like think of your thoughts, your last thoughts, but I would say for me, your circle is so important.
Yeah.
Like I know one of your things was, you know, in college, like what should you be doing? It's like network. It's important. So I know some people use college for partying and stuff like that, but like really take it, you might not have the opportunity to have access to all these professors ever again, or all these different clubs ever again, or like, you know, all these different things. So really, when it comes to community and networking, take it seriously. Like get yourself, if you want to see yourself in a certain place, put yourself in those situations.
Around those people.
Put yourself around those people. If you're trying to buy a house, like, you know, get next to some realtors, get next to some people that just bought a house, you know. Like you really have to be intentional on making some of those things happen. What would it be for you guys that you would give to our viewers, I guess?
I would say the number one thing for me is your mindset. I think it's super important, like, to actually believe that you can accomplish these things, because if you don't believe it, inevitably your actions are going to kind of like, it's going to reflect what you're thinking. But if you really shift your mindset to really think that these things are possible, and that was the first thing I had to do. I was like, yo, these things are possible. You put your mind to something, you put your head in the ground, and you don't focus on anything else, and you just focus on your goals, inevitably you're going to get what you want. And I'll even use that, and that's why I put Atomic Habits on that list, because when you learn good habits and you shift your mindset, you can accomplish literally anything. And another thing, the first step is trying. You have to try. If you don't try, you'll never find out what it could be like.
Right.
I like that.
I'd say you need to visualize or figure out where do you want to be, right? If you don't have a goal that is actually your goal, not someone else's goal for you, like what do you want? If you want to be in a place where like, I really just want financial freedom. All right, if that's really your goal, then back to Dave Ramsey's statement, I need to do things now that other people aren't doing so that I can get to that goal and do the things that other people won't be able to do. You know, that's really what it comes down to. Yeah.
I like that.
I would say pick your struggle. So you can either, sacrifice now, maybe, cut back on expenses and not get every single thing that you want. And then invest, like cut back on your spending and invest so that you can, be in a better position in the future. Or you can just, not manage your money, continue accumulating debt. And then when you then find yourself struggling, forever, like find yourself working forever, like not being able to retire, not being able to like pay for emergencies and things like that. So it's like life, anything that you want, you're going to have to work hard for. And it's not like there is no such thing as like getting rich quick. You have to invest your time, invest, in yourself. Yeah. And, if it was easy, quote unquote, I'm not saying it's impossible, but if it was easy, then everybody would do it, right? So it's just a matter of like, what is it that you're going to choose? What path are you going to choose to do? Going back to, mindset, money is in abundance. You can, provide a better, environment for yourself and for your family, but you just know that it's possible. So it just go back to understanding that principle.
Ain't that everything in life? It's crazy.
Seeing is believing.
You have to
honestly.
apply it. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, thank you, Jamal and Tashina, for joining us on this episode about finance.
Love this topic.
Yeah, I know. It's so much passion. No, I love it. And honestly, it's a good thing to be passionate about. I feel like a lot of the things that people are passionate about are really trash. And so to have like I mean, we're real on this show. I'm not saying yours is trash. Like, that's up to you. But that's just my, opinion. So it's good to find certain things that are going to actually help you in life. So hopefully this was something that was beneficial to you. I know it was long, and by the time you get to this point, it would be too late anyway. I would be like, I would break up this episode, like press pause, come back, and then watch the second part, But now we're at the end. So, but if you like these type of topics, you have to let us know. Put it in the comments. Share this with your friends and family. Don't keep it to yourself. We want to be successful as a community and as a family, all right? We want to make sure you know about what's coming up next. And so on May 3rd through the 4th, we have the Revive Conference. It's going to be live at the Mount Sinai Seventh-day Adventist Church in Orlando, Florida. Starting off Friday with a great worship event, and then going into Saturday starting at 10:30 in the morning, going with multiple sessions, different speakers that we're excited to have. And then wrapping up on Saturday night at 8:30 with a Decades block party. Ooh. And you do not want to miss it. So the idea, choose your decade, dress up as it, and we're going to be playing games from every decade. So you're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be a good time. They're all free events, so you definitely want to plan to be at Mount Sinai, Orlando, May 3rd and the 4th of May, which I already said May 3rd. Right.
Just emphasizing.
No one's going to be 3rd and 4th.
If you want to see past episodes, go to thewalklive.org. There's plenty to watch and see from there. But we want to thank you as always for watching or listening. We really do appreciate it. And Andre, can you pray us out?
Yeah, let's do it. Father in heaven, we're thankful that you have brought us together for this episode. We're thankful that we're able to have a real talk about money and a lot of the struggles that we face with money, give some advice about different aspects of it, how to get out of debt, how to grow your wealth, how to invest. These are a lot of the things that we face on a day-to-day basis, and we know that you aren't a God that just cares about our spirituality, but you care about the everyday aspects of our life. You said that you wish above all things that we would prosper and be in health. So we know that you care about these things too, and you want us to be good stewards of our money. So we're just asking that you help us in our day-to-day lives to be able to formulate the proper habits when it comes to money. Give us the perseverance to go through the struggles that we need to go through the sacrifices that we need to go through to set us up better in the future. We're asking that you'll bless us so that we can bless others. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank y'all. Whoa. Before you go, make sure you like us on all social media platforms at The Walk Live.
and find us on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Our journey doesn't have to end here. Join us on the next walk.